My name's Lucy and I work in family support at Derian House Childrens Hospice in Chorley. So I'm just here today to talk to Karen and Bec and just have a nice chat. But it's lovely to be here and thank you for asking me to come on your podcast. It's my first one, so I'm quite excited.
Hi, welcome to Room to Grieve podcast. We're your hosts, Karen and Bec. Grab yourself a cuppa, find a comfortable spot, and we'll journey through grief together.
How exciting! First podcast. That means we're the professionals today.
You are. I've never been asked, so I feel quite privileged, to be honest. So, let's chat away.
Really appreciate you being here. So, thank you very much. So, you said that you work at Derian House, which is a children's hospice. I start off every week with this. I have so many questions. I really do. I always sit here like, a horse in the gates, kind of like chomping at the bit, ready to go, just to fire a load of questions at you. But I suppose one of the best places to start is really, what is a children's hospice and what is the purpose of it? Because a lot of people have a real misconception about what a hospice is. And I think that builds a bit of a fear around them, doesn't it?
It does, and I think the word hospice strikes fear into a lot of families, and I think when you've got a child with a life-limiting condition, even though you know what may be coming, when someone suggests a hospice being involved, I think it becomes quite scary. But when you come to Derian or you experience a children's hospice, it's probably everything that you don't imagine. And I think when I started work here, I think there was a lot of emphasis around people went, oh, you don't want to work there, it'll be really sad, you won't like it. But actually, the purpose of Derian and all children's hospices is to make memories. It's to bring a bit of light to a dark situation. It's to support the whole family, so mums, dads, grandparents, siblings. Obviously, we've got community nurses and things like that will go out into the community to help children in their own home. But really, it's a lovely place to come, and we try and wrap our arms around the whole family because it's a really horrible situation which no one ever wants to be in. But I always say, in my role, I try and make it the best it can be, and I try my best to make sure that all the families get an experience where they can make memories, they can ask questions, they can be relaxed, they can be themselves. And hopefully make the awful situation a little better, because ultimately there is nothing worse in the whole world than losing a child. So that's how I feel quite passionately about Derian, obviously particularly, and the support that I can give to families. Because I'm not medical, but I work very closely alongside our care team and medical staff. It's good because you can give you can have your medical questions and then you can have your emotional and practical questions. So I'm sort of tagged on to them. So yeah, it's a lovely role. I'm privileged to work with these families. That they always astound me every day.
I mean, and I think a big thing of what you were saying there is that a hospice isn't just a place you go to die, is it?
No, I mean, we have children. Our criteria is from birth up to 26 years old. So as you can imagine, we have some children that may be referred to as at 6 years old, and they're still. Today we have like a school holiday session. There's 3 boys come today that have been coming to us for about 4 years, and hopefully, they may still be coming in the next 5 years, 6 years. So it's a continuation really. And once they're in and they get to know us and they know the staff, it helps the families massively when things maybe start to deteriorate because they're used to us and they know us. So I think the key for me, and it doesn't always,
I think that's really important as well.
The mums, I know the dads, I know what they like, what they don't like. And if sadly then the child dies, it makes the whole situation a lot easier, because I know for myself, if it was me, I wouldn't want some randomer. Hello, I'm Lucy from the Children's Hospice. Sorry, your child's died. I'm here to support you now. You'd be like, oh, I don't think so. So for me, the sooner you can get a child referred into the hospice, the better. And I know that can't always happen. But when it does, we see the relationships build and everyone's a lot more comfortable, including the child. Ultimately, it's about the child, isn't it? So they get to know the nurses, they get to know the community team, they get to know faces, because I'm sure, especially for older children, a hospice they can Google things, can't they? So it's just a good thing that we can try and make them see that it's not a scary place to be. But yeah,
I do wish that I'd taken advantage of Derian a little bit earlier in Emily's journey. I was of the feeling that don't mention the word hospice. I think I'd had a sort of experience from an elderly relative that's been in one, and that was just stuck in my mind that I didn't want Emily in that environment. So I was pushed slightly to go to Derian, and all the way there, I was just thinking, just get this over and done with. I've ticked a box. I've done as I'm told. It was actually from Macmillan nurse, Jo. So it was my Macmillan nurse who said, I'd like you to go. I think now's the time to go to Derian. And I said, no, I don't want to. So I was sort of reluctantly went. Like I said, all the way there, I was saying, right, just go, get it over and done with. Emily was with us. I think she was in the wheelchair the first time we went, but she was still a little bit, she could do little bits. And as I walked through the door, it was that instant I walked into reception. I thought, I love this place. I thought, why haven't I been coming here? And I was mad with myself that I hadn't taken advantage of the services, because it's just the fear. It's like Natalie said in last week's podcast, the fear of the word hospice and of going there, and something is going to end. It's going to happen. But
I know we were the same. I remember texting you just before sort of Easter time in the year, like last year before the kids died. And I remember saying to you, this is so hard. We're really struggling at home. We can't do this. I feel like I'm failing him. I just don't have the ability myself to give him what he needs. We just have no help. And I remember you saying, have you contacted the hospice? And I remember us having that conversation, and I was like, he's not going to the hospice. He's going to die at home. He's my son. I'm going to look after him. I'm going to do the best for him. I'm not going to put him in there and leave him there. That's not going to happen. And then you said to me, you'd taken Emily, and how much Emily had really liked it and felt at peace there, and how beautiful it was, and that it was nothing like what your preconceptions were, and what you'd expected. And you really kind of convinced me to try and contact a hospice. And then, as everyone knows, we had a right issue with that, but Derian helped, and with the help of Derian, thankfully, Derian offered to take Bradley. It was just 3 hours away and we couldn't get him to you, but your staff helped by ringing our local hospices and finding somewhere for Bradley. And then when we got there, it was like instantly I felt like this was the right thing to do. I felt so much at peace. It was such a beautiful place to be, so calm and tranquil and friendly, and everybody's just so professional and so experienced there that you just have the right level of interaction. I'm talking end of life, because we didn't get to be involved before that, but they don't stay in the room too long. They stay just long enough. Everybody kind of just, it's a real quite well-oiled machine, really, isn't it? Everybody knows what they're doing. And it, for us, certainly, we found it really respectful, and we were really, really pleased that we went. And I just think that too many people have this preconceived idea.
I agree, and I think the word hospice, I always wish we were just called Derian House. But then there's got the Children's Hospice tagged onto it, so people know what we do. But I think, particularly with children's hospices, I think, because we have a local hospice, and I think primarily a lot of it is about end of life. With us, it's more about the journey of what's going to happen. So, obviously they do take children end of life who come to us as a rapid referral, which is absolutely fine. But like you say, the oiled machine is good because we know how to adapt to these families and the situation that's going on. And I suppose I can say it's my job, but you become acutely aware of all the different needs of different families, because every family is different. So every ending is different. How people grieve is different. How they respond is different. So you've got to be quite good at managing and assessing the family of, do they want a lot of involvement? Do they not? Do they want to stay here after the child's died for 4 days? Do they want to stay here for 1 day? And I very much think you've got to look at them as a whole family and look at their needs and what they actually want, because we have some that will come and just stay, when the child dies, or rest with us in one of our sunflower rooms. Maybe they only want to stay for a day because they want to have the visitors, and then they feel like they've said their goodbyes, and then we'll go.
I didn't realise, and I still didn't realise until I spoke to Natalie or one of our guests, that actually, because this wasn't an option for us with the hospice that Bradley went to. He was in an adult's hospice, so maybe it was different. But I actually didn't even realise, even though my son has died in a hospice, that the children staying in the hospice and you still being able to visit them up until the day of their funeral, I didn't realise that was. I didn't know that was a thing. So
that can be. And
so is it like a specialist room?
Yes.
How's it work?
Well, so when the child dies, if they choose to rest with us, obviously they're given that option. Then we can facilitate, if needs be, a child resting at home, because we have special a machine. It's like a duvet, but it's called a flex mort, and it's just like a machine it's a duvet that when the water goes in, it's very, very cold. So you can lie the child on it and then cover them with this cold duvet. You can't tend to keep a child at home for as long as when we use our sunflower rooms. So we've got 3 sunflower rooms. One's more like a nursery for babies and toddlers, and then we've got 2 larger ones. And basically, they just look like bedrooms. We keep them quite plain because parents like to decorate them themselves and make it their own for their child. I mean, we've had some families. One boy really loved the jungle, so she bought lots of fake ivy, and it was all like a big jungle. And we put like jungle music on in the background, and we had flashing lights. You make it their own room, but they're all got a cooler, so we switch that on. The room becomes extremely cold for obvious reasons. So we can turn it off. So I think once an hour it goes off, potentially 10 minutes. But we provide cuddly blankets and wheat bags, and I'll supply hot drinks for as long as they want. And families can spend as long as they want with their child in the sunflower room. We don't say, you can come between 1 and 2 or 2 and 4. And again, some families want to spend a lot of time in the sunflower room, some don't, and they just feel more reassured that the child's here in a nice room, checked on. And they're checked on 24/7 because obviously we're a 24-hour service. So even if I go home, the nurses on the night shift will always go in and check on the child. And if they want some music playing on the Google, we'll always make sure that's on. Open the curtains in the morning, shut them at night. Always speak to the child.
That feels so much more reassuring for me because, and like I say, I wish I'd have known that things like that existed, because having Bradley in the funeral parlour just, shut away.
Must have been really hard.
Oh, that was a hard thing, yeah. Just to think that they're on their own and they're lonely. And I've said it on other podcasts before. I sent my nan's ashes to be with him because, mentally, I couldn't cope with him being on his own.
And I think that is really hard. And I think sometimes the child just being here and the fact they know that, because we have 3 family flats as well. So if the family want to stay during this time, they can. So we can look after them, give them breakfast, lunch and tea, cuddles. I'm very good at hugs. I'm a big hugger, so I distribute hugs on a regular basis. But I think what I get from it is the reassurance that they're there, so they can have a sleep upstairs, knowing that if they wake up at 2 a.m. and think, oh, they can come downstairs in the PJs and no one's going to go, hey, what are you doing? So some choose to stay for the week. I mean, obviously it depends on certain things, and we can check on the child every day. And if we feel that there's a deterioration that we can't manage, then we will contact the funeral directors, and they're more than happy to come out and check. But 10 to 1, it's normally absolutely fine. And then we can do memory making things like handprints, footprints. We do hand casts, foot casts, whatever the family want, really. We can do huge family canvases, or we can just do one. Or if they want them getting changed into different clothes, then I can do that.
That's so lovely.
It's really whatever the family wants. that, because like we said before, every family is different, so you don't know what's coming, because I don't know how I would react. So you've just got to be really mindful of, the family's wishes, but just try and make it as easy and calm and memories, really. That's what it's about. And then when the transition goes to the funeral directors, that can be a tricky day when that happens, because they've been used to the child being here, and then you do have to make that break. But they've had that time, and I think some families find that really valuable. And then they go on to the funeral from there. So they can either leave here on the funeral date, or some go to the funeral directors for a day or two and then have the funeral after that.
Yeah, that's just really interesting. And I think that's kind of says why it's really important to be involved with the hospice first, because as well, when Bradley went in, he was already very poorly. And so then we had to have a lot of those conversations of what's his normal baseline, what does he normally act like, is this different for him, how has he been? Whereas if we'd have had that involvement earlier, they would have been able just to have made, I think, a lot of those calls about what was happening without having to ask us quite so much detail. So it would have probably been a bit of an easier transition for us without.
Because you get to know the child, don't you? And you know their likes and dislikes and how they like to be positioned, or whether they want to chat or they don't. And you just get to know, don't you? I mean, I know when our community nurses used to come out and see Emily, didn't they? And they had some good banter with her. And they certainly got to know her character, I think. I remember Natalie, it was I hope, a nice experience of nursing, but also building those relationships, and, with Karen and the family as well, but primarily Emily, because, she's a teenager, and it's like, oh God, who are these people coming into the house? I'm sure that's how I would feel.
I know that every day that we used to stand in our hallway and discuss Emily's demands for that day, and what the girls were allowed to do and not do. Wasn't allowed to ask if she was okay. Wasn't allowed to ask because she said it's effing Groundhog Day. What do you think? Do you think I'm okay? I'm the same as yesterday. I think Natalie wanted to do her nails, and she bought nail varnish. And Emily really wanted her nails doing, but she was always done her own nails, and there was always she just used to love nail art. So she wouldn't let anybody else do them, but she really wanted them doing, I could tell.
She's her mother's daughter.
I'll still have the nail varnish, though.
Well, she's so good at art, though, isn't she? Wasn't she?
Yeah.
Brilliant. I remember seeing some of the pictures that she'd drawn, and they were astounding.
The thing that she did for, she did a head, which was called Samantha, and one of the nurses was called Samantha. So it was a big thing that we had to get the head and put it next to Samantha's head. And the thing that Emily had done had his eyes gouged out, and the throat slit, the blood coming down. I'll have to show you Samantha one day. A bit gory.
We had that picture on our wall here because the community team used to have pictures. So that was the picture of Sam with this gruesome head, like just holding it like that. But
oh, that's great that it's down.
I don't know. It was nice. It was nice times, sad times, but nice times.
Oh, but we obviously didn't use the hospice itself facility when she became too poorly. Decided we wanted her at home. We knew she would want to be at home. It's where she loved the most. So we set everything up in the lounge. We had a double bed and we had the hospital bed. But every day the nurses came in twice a day. In the middle of the night when she was struggling to breathe one night, and they came out, I think 2 or 3 in the morning, and they helped me, and they left me the machinery so I could, do the lungs as and when I needed to during the night with the suction machine. And they just said, if you don't want to do it, if you're scared to do it yourself, just ring us. And like I say, it was 24/7, could ring any time, and within half an hour, somebody would be with me. They were just great girls. They were just lovely, lovely people.
But it's just that reassurance, isn't it? That because obviously it's not for everyone, a child coming to rest here. And like you say, particularly with older children, I would imagine, it is where they want to be, and that's fine. So if that happens, then either at home or the child then goes to the funeral directors, and we'll just step in and continue the care and support afterwards. So obviously I kept in contact with Karen, come over to the house, and then obviously there's other things that we offer here that you can use. We've got a counselling service.
There's usually cake involved as well, isn't there, Lucy?
That's why Karen goes, isn't it?
There is cake on every corner. We have cake on a Wednesday. We have cake after every meal at lunch. People bring in cake. There's biscuits, there's sweets. And then going on from that, we've got bereavement groups that we offer. So we've set up a bereaved mums group, which is on a Saturday once a month. There's a bereaved dads group, which is going really well, which is on an evening once a month. And again, I sort of enticed them in with a promise of a takeaway. So
I was going to say, I mean, I know you can't say anyone specifically, but this is just something that Karen and I have discussed a bit recently, really. Men's grief is different to women's, is it?
Rapidly.
I mean, we feel like it is in watching our older boys and our husbands, and yeah, I didn't know whether that was just a fair generalised assumption to make, really.
Well, I think it is. And when I go out and see families after the child's died for, say, bereavement visits, quite often I'll go into the lounge and there might be the husband and wife or whatever sat on the couch, and then we'll start having a chat, and then the dad will have to go and do something, or I need to go upstairs, or I've got a Teams call, and then you never see them again. And the the partners will say, he's not good at things like this. And I think as women generally, we are better at talking, aren't we, and expressing how we feel. But I think men, they are really different. So we noticed there was a bit of a gap with men, because we obviously offer a stepping stones group where it's for couples, but we were finding that they'd come as a couple for the first session, and the next one, the husbands they weren't turning up, so it would end up being...
Sound familiar, Karen?
Yeah, we'd start off with, say, 6 couples, and then you'd end up with 12 people, and then you'd end up with maybe 6, but they were all the women. It was rare sometimes that the man stays the distance. And if they do come, they can be very, very quiet. So we thought, they definitely do need to talk, but maybe there's a different way of doing it. So I set up the bereaved dads group, and it was all around not being sort of counsel-y, sort of, hey, let's all talk about our feelings. They can have pizza, kebabs, fish and chips, whatever. I go and get the takeaway. They all sit round. It's gone up for about 13 men now, all really different, but it's been the best thing ever. They have laughs, inappropriate banter. They don't always talk about the child, but if they do, they all get it. And they become all on their own WhatsApp group. We've been to the golf driving range. We go out for dinner. We go to the rugby club where there's pool and darts and snooker. So even though they're all in the same boat, it just is a really nice group because they all get it. And I always say, unless you've been in it, you cannot get it, can you? How it feels to lose a child. And I always say, I can't understand how you both feel. I'd like to think I've got the empathy and the experience now to help and try and support you. But unless you're in it, no one can say, I know how you feel, because they don't.
I mean, half the time, we can't say how we feel. Yesterday, I think I cried all day yesterday. And over nothing. You know, there was nothing.
It's not over nothing.
Trigger. No, I know it's not over nothing, but nothing set me off. It's not. There was nothing triggered. You know, like we was talking about triggers last week about school uniforms and things like that. I had nothing to trigger me. It's just utter sadness.
And I think sometimes as well, given our life circumstances and that there's still work and there's still, other kids and there's still husbands and there's still friendships and there's still life that goes on, sometimes you just focus on getting through that normal stuff, that then when you sit and you have 5 minutes, you just, it overwhelms you and you crash and burn. And I think Karen, you've had quite a busy couple of weeks. And then I think as you flew out to Spain yesterday, I think when you arrived at Spain, that was probably and relax. And you'd got 5 more minutes to mentally think. And I think everything just was like okay, now's my chance to, you're going to notice me.
It backfired on me because I drove to the paint shop to get my paint that I paid for 3 weeks ago when I was here. And they said, oh, it's not in yet. And I just stood there thinking, I need this paint. I've got to paint. What am I going to do? And it was like panic that if I ain't painting, I'm going to start thinking, what can I do?
And maybe with dads as well, it's that they crack on and I'm busy. And, a lot of dads end up doing stuff in the house and, I'm going to knock this wall down and then I'm going to paint this and I'm going to do this. And anything really to stopping. And because when you stop and you do start thinking, don't you? And I should imagine that is when it becomes quite overwhelming.
Yeah, this earlier part is very much about trying to figure out where you fit in now, because it's bizarre because everything looks exactly the same, yet it's also different. And so then it's like, that just becomes a real weird, confusing space to be in, isn't it? And it's all just really bizarre because then it's like, why does everything look like it used to, but nothing makes sense anymore? So how do I make sense of all of this now? How do I navigate any of this? It's really weird. Can't really explain it.
We find, or I've spoke to a lot of parents who say, if the child's been poorly for some time and they've had medical appointments, they're doing the medicines, they're doing the feeds, they're doing this relentless visitors into the house, and you've got appointments coming out of your ears, and then suddenly it stops. That's really hard because it's like a void, isn't it? Because you have
no normal to even look at to go back to anymore, do you? Because that's gone too.
And it was what was happening every day, and it was like, this is my routine, and you get in the routine, and then it cruelly stops. And that's time that you've got back, but actually you don't want that time back because you do anything to do what you were doing before. I've heard one mum last week say someone had said to her, oh, well, at least you've got more time now to do things. And she said, no, I want to go back and do the meds and feeds. I want to go to the hospital. I'd do anything to get that back. And that's really harsh because it just stops like that, doesn't it?
I struggled with that because I used to go to bed at night and then after a couple of hours of being asleep, I would wake up like in a state. I haven't done the meds. I haven't done the meds. She's not had a steroid. She's not had this. She's not had the other. And Rob would have to calm me down, and I would literally be absolutely at screaming pitch.
But it must be really difficult because that is part of your life for so long, isn't it? And then, even seeing the professionals, like people, the nurses and the consultants and things, it's sort of, that's it. And people don't get that, I don't think. That's also really hard because you've got this time on your hands. But what do you do with that time? You don't really know what to do with it, I'm sure. And finding things to do that you really probably don't really want to do.
No, because you can't concentrate on things. You've got your brain fog. You think, right, we wrote a book in that time. Yeah, we was really busy. She's like a slave driver. Have you done this? Have you done that? She'd send me notes. And I'd stop opening my emails, actually, Lucy, because I know that if I opened them, there'd be about 20 jobs there to do. So I actually pretended I had no Wi-Fi for about a month. It's just so... But yeah, that time when your norm stops, which isn't a norm, it's just your norm. Going into a children's hospital once a fortnight is not the norm. You miss all those people. You miss the nurses you spoke to. JP, Emily's consultant, how can you miss a Scottish guy that was like oncologist?
He loves JP, don't they?
Oh, he's amazing. Emily loved him. Yeah, he used to ask her every fortnight, he'd go, any questions, Emily? Because he knew what the question would be. And she went, when can I go to Alton Towers? And that was it. And that was the only question she ever asked.
And something she wanted to do, and she got there, didn't she?
She did get there. It was horrific. I was just pushing the wheelchair up them hills and everything. And I had the thing to put in her mouth to mass if she had a seizure. And I was an absolute nervous wreck the whole day. But she loved it. She went on the Smiler ride about 5 times. Her art teacher wanted to submit a picture to Alton Towers, didn't they, of that Emily had done, and we wanted to do something with it. They said it was a fabulous picture, but they don't work with other charities. They'll only work with their own, so they turned us down. Then a Teenage Cancer Trust approached them. It took probably about 6 months before they answered, and then they just said, I understand that, what they were saying, they have their own charity and they didn't want to get involved. But I was absolutely heartbroken over that.
Rubbish.
We'll do something else with the drawing.
Yeah, we're going to do lots of stuff with Emily's drawings. I think it's just Karen and I say Karen and I loosely because it's mainly me. I'm horrific. Like Karen said, I'm a bit of a slave driver, but I get all these ideas in my head and then I need to do them all now. And I get really frustrated because they all take a little while to sort of get out there. But we have so much stuff that we want to do for the kids. It's going to take us 10 years to do it all, I think.
What's the next thing you feel like coming up that you're going to do?
Grief education in schools. So that's really important for us. Training teachers and professionals who work with children. So not necessarily just schools, like after school clubs, scouts, guides, those kind of things. Anybody who kind of works with children to understand a little bit more about what grief can look like, what it can feel like, and how that can manifest in the children, the types of feelings and thoughts that the children might have, and what they can do to support that and to help that and to understand a little bit more.
Well, we have a sibling support service within our team, and I know quite often we get requests from schools that they've had one of our siblings in the class, and they'll ring us and they're not quite sure what to do or say, because I think you're right. I think it has got better in our experience with schools coping with somebody, but there's still quite a lot of not wanting to talk about it, or if they do, how should we say it? And obviously every child reacts differently, won't they, to their own grief if they've lost a brother or sister. So some might be angry, there might be a bit of disruptive behaviour in the class, some may just withdraw completely, some don't want to go to school. But that's really good, because I think if it becomes more of a thing you talk about, it's not something to be scared of, is it really, at the end of the day?
And it's to help schools be a bit more proactive instead of just being reactive. It's a really bad time to be reactive to something, because then you're just in the throes of the whole chaos and the mess, and then you're sort of almost pushed to get up to speed with what's going on. Whereas if you're a little bit more sort of proactive with everything, and you have a policy and processes set in place, and people can be a little bit more prepared. We always say that understanding grief is a bit like trying to tell somebody what it's like to have a baby. When a friend falls pregnant or is going to go into labour or whatever, you can say to them, this is what it was like for me, and you can give them all the stories in the world, and then they come out of that labour room and they say, well, why didn't you tell me? And you say, well, I did. And they were like, Christ, is that what you meant? And grief's a little bit the same. Like, you could never give quite the weight to the words, but you can at least give somebody a little bit of an identity that when it starts to happen to them, they can think back and go, that's what you meant. And then you just feel a little less scared and a little less alone, because there's so much when grief first hits. I'm a grown adult and I thought I understood what it meant, but there was so much that you find yourself Googling, like, is this normal? Or I'd text Karen, like, I feel like this, or I had this thought, or I had this feeling, or I've got this physical pain. Is that all normal? Karen would be like, oh yeah, well, I've got that too. What about this? And
did you find it helpful, though, that you had Karen to validate how you were feeling? Because I think
100%.
I'm thinking of one specific lady that I'm working with at the moment, and her sadness is so intense, and she keeps, I think really all she wanted was that this was okay. But she's saying, how long am I going to feel like this? And my friend said I should be doing this and that. And I said, look, at the end of the day, it's your grief, and how you cope with it is how you cope with it, because I might cope with it differently. We have some parents who might get up and go to the shop the next day. Some parents don't leave the house for 6 months. Some don't go to the supermarket.
There's certain things that you can say to somebody else who is grieving. So, like, I could say to Karen, you know, all I want to do is go and be with Bradley. I just want to be with Bradley. Whereas if I said that to another friend, they might think, oh shit, she's going to go and kill herself. Whereas, you know, Karen knows that's not what I mean. She understands what I mean by that, you know, and it's like, it's just being a bit safer to say things without having the caveats or the explanations and that behind it, I think, when you've got someone else, isn't it?
Definitely. Small thing like going to the hairdressers. She hadn't been and she was wanting to go, but she knew it would have memories of her child because they both used to go together. So in the end, I said, look, I will take you to the hairdressers. And she went, oh, will you? Oh, my goodness. And I said, yeah, no, it's not a problem. And I took her. It was emotional for her. She did cry a lot, but it was massive. She's not been to the supermarket yet because she's scared of seeing the foods on the shelves.
Supermarkets are horrific. It's the first thing I said to Karen when Emily died. No one told me to stay out of the supermarket. And the first thing I text Karen was, don't go to the supermarket.
Yeah.
Order your food
You don't
in.
know you're going to see either. And then you find if people see you, they might just go down the other aisle because they don't want to know what to say to you. And then you're stressed and it's just overwhelming. But those are things that people would say, it must be a bit weird. You can't even go to Tesco. But actually, it's a massive thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, seeing mozzarella dippers on the thing, that were it. I just had to put mid-trolley back and go home, you know, just like...
And you saying that's not weird because I hear it all the time. So it's just being able to talk about it and let people know that it's okay if you feel like that. And if you want to stay in bed all day one day, that's okay. It doesn't mean it's odd. If you don't want to clear the room out for 10 years, that's okay. A lot of people put pressure on people, I think, when they've lost somebody after a while, because I don't know whether it's because it might make them feel better.
Of course it is.
Oh, good, she's cracking on with her life. That makes me feel better.
We're conditioned as a friend, aren't we, to help somebody, to make them feel better. Yeah, but I mean, I was terrible before I understood this. You know, I thought I was being a really nice friend, trying to, you know, cheer someone up or to help them feel better. I felt like I was doing something useful. And actually, I realise now that that's just shit and nobody wants to be cheered up and actually just, you know, come and sit with me in silence. You know, and I'm not necessarily saying I want to be on my own, but sometimes just sit with me. I might not talk to you, but it doesn't mean I don't want you there, because but it's a really weird thing to try and explain to somebody else. And I think that's why we do this podcast, is because we have realised how much, I mean, I dread to think how either of us would have coped without the other one. I don't think we would we?
I don't know where we'd be. We've said this quite often, and I've no idea where we'd be.
So, and that's why we do this, really, because we want to share our experiences with those people out there who might not have that friend that they can talk to. We just hope that they can listen to us, you know, talking to other people, and just see some of those similarities in themselves and really just not feel like quite so alone or quite so scared, or because grief is lonely and scary.
The thing about just sitting with someone, completely true. And people, I think as a friend, if I hadn't have worked here, I would be the same. Come on, we'll go out for coffee, we'll do this, we'll do that, because I want to see that friend happy and smiling. But they might be, that's the last thing they want to do. So even if I just go and sit with someone and we have a coffee, you can reassure them that how they're feeling is okay. And some days you'll have good days and some days you'll have bad days. And then people will say, well, I went out for a meal last night and then I felt really guilty that I was having a nice time. And I think people were looking at me saying, well, why is she out? And that isn't the case, but it's okay to go out also and have a nice meal. And it's okay to buy yourself some new clothes or, you know, do something nice. But then you're smacked in the face with the guilt, because should I be smiling today? I get that a lot, you know, the guilt about carrying on with your life.
Yeah, I think talking's brilliant. I mean, the amount of messages, the amount of emails that we've had from people all over the world, yeah, it's been brilliant. It's made what we're doing worthwhile. Just reaching out saying, totally enjoyed today's podcast, and feel like you're a best friend, you know, to feel like you're friends, you're my friend. And
we were both emotional a couple of days ago, weren't we? We got a message that said, you've really helped my friend understand my grief, so thank you. And, you know, when you just think...
And if you can just do it for one person, I mean, it's amazing, isn't it?
Well, Yeah, what we'd like to do is like a room to grieve cafe. So we've called ourselves Room to Grieve, and even if we did just use hospices around the country and set up, like a drop-in thing, so me and Bec can be there, we can have chat, we can have cake,
Cake
has to be involved.
I think that's a great idea, because people could just come along and it would be informal, and if they want to talk about it, they can. But if they don't. And I think half the thing with the peer support, isn't it, that even if you don't talk about it, that person has been through what you've been through. So, I could go on about it for 100 years. The importance of that, of people knowing, they go, wow, she's just said how I feel. Suddenly that makes me feel better, because I thought I was a bit weird that I was feeling like that. So, yeah, I mean, anything like that's great.
It's an instant rapport, isn't it? As soon as that's it. It's like you've got a friend for life.
Yeah. And sometimes, like, you can't recognise what it is that you're feeling, and you can't name it, but you sit with somebody else and they describe something and you think, that's it. That's what I'm going through. And, sometimes you just need somebody else to put the words to it, because it's a bit confusing, isn't it?
Yeah. So and then when that happens and people start to bounce off each other, you can see almost the relief that, God, I thought I was bizarre. I thought I was a bit odd because I'd not left the house for 3 months. But actually, he's just told me he never left the house for 7 months.
I don't leave the house very often.
I know, but that's okay, isn't it? But other people might think that's weird. But when you talk to someone else who's gone through what you've gone through, it's not weird at all.
Absolutely, you explain how your friendships with some people have changed and in some areas have broken down slightly and just look really different, and you feel like that you're just not supported because your friends aren't there, or you're the one that's like alienating all your friends, when actually you speak to a lot of people, and most people, their friendship circles change, and it's all those other losses inside that big loss that I think if you're not going through this, you don't really think about. And, and then when they happen to you, you just start getting, I think it's very easy to get into that spiral of, oh, for God's sake, what next? Why me? This is always happening to me. It's so much. But then when you realise that actually this is just part of grief and it's happening to everybody else too, it kind of makes you feel a little bit less like you're failing, I think.
I think friendships do change, don't they? I've heard that a lot. Some people say they've had the same good friends that stuck through them thick and thin, and then there's others that have sort of just vanished. They obviously can't cope or know how to cope with how you're feeling, and maybe the easiest thing at that time is just to sort of, I'll just leave them alone for a bit because they're bereaved.
Yeah, but then everybody leaves you alone for a bit,
and equally when people avoid people, it's like it would be much easier just to say, I really don't know what to say to you, but I'm here for you. But some people just avoid it because they don't know how to deal with it themselves, which is difficult, and you're on the receiving end of that.
Yeah, actions speak louder than words, and just showing up, I think, for me, is most important.
I think we'd like people to show up and just come do your ironing and your cleaning and take the dog for a while.
A practical thing.
If she's just taking a piss because I don't iron.
Did not iron?
No, I don't even know one.
Yeah.
Do you know what? I picked Morgan up from work the other day, and somebody at her work says to me, something about, they watched a podcast and they said something about the ironing, and then they said something about Morgan's got odd socks on. I was like, and? They were like, well, she could wear matching socks. I was like, it's a thing in our house. All socks just go into one pot and you just pick two. I don't care whose they are. I don't care if they match. Like, I am not spending my life pairing off 60 pairs of socks plus every fucking week. No way.
Did you ever swear then? You swore. Oh my God, you got to 55 minutes without swearing.
I've got a badge on my lanyard and it says, somewhat sweary, but remarkably articulate.
That's me. I need one of them. And even just to sit there and say, this is sad, that's not enough. I mean, shit isn't even enough, but it's as closest as you're going to get in the English language, really. I mean, there isn't another word. It's just, it's fucking shit is probably what it is. But
you just try and make make it the best it can be, and that's all that I can try and do is help people in that way. And when we offer a counselling service here, so I'm not a counsellor, but then if we feel that the people that we see need a bit more, then we can refer to our counsellors. So obviously there is a little waiting list here, but it's nothing like that. And we can offer different sorts of counselling as well. So we've got psychotherapy, John's just done EMDR training, which is around more trauma.
And I've had the EDMR training.
Really?
EDMR from John, yeah.
And how did you find it?
It helped massively with trauma. Really? We're going to do a full podcast on it. John's going to come on.
You can look at the different families that we have, and some will respond really well to the EMDR. So he just thought he'd do it, and we've had amazing results from it. So it's nice that we can offer that counselling and adapt it to what somebody needs. And we do all holistic therapies. Again, all the families can access that. Mums, dads, grandparents, they just ring up and book in with her. And again, that's relaxation, a bit of time for you. She'll mix essential oils and things like that too that you can take away with you. So
she came to the house and she did Emily's. She started on Emily's feet. Emily agreed to let her have her feet done, and she moved slowly up her leg, and then she was doing her hands, and Emily was just like, oh, she likes this. So she had it a few times that she mixed Emily and oil, and then I could do it with the oil. And because when Emily passed, I asked for it, and she did me a mix of the oil, and I've got it in a little roller thing. So the smell reminds me of Emily.
And if you run out of it, then just ask me, and we'll get you some more. That's what's lovely about Derian, is that there's there is a structure to it, but we just work around each family and what's best for them, and we don't have a specific time limit on things.
It's the continuity, because you get zero continuity with your GP. You know, if you needed help, you would get nothing from the GP service, because you'd have to tell someone. Even when I went back to the surgery, they didn't even know I'd lost a daughter. That's something we talk about training to the schools. The GPs need that training. The GPs need a grief policy. It should be highlighted as soon as I make that appointment on my records that I'm a bereaved mum. And when you've got to explain all that again, it's disgusting, really. So Derian, do bring continuity. When I ring, if I ring you, you know who I am, you know what I've been through, you know all about Emily, and that to me is just priceless.
It is, and you don't want to have to repeat your story over and over again, do you? Because it's hard enough.
How do you deal, Lucy? How do you deal with it? Like, how do people react to what your job is?
Normally, oh my God, that must be really sad. Oh, I don't know how you do that. Or I don't know. I mean, we do get regular supervision. So, and if we want to speak, we have counsellor, an external counsellor that we're encouraged to see. I think, obviously, it does affect me, and it is sad. But the way I view it is, I want to help, and I know I can't fix it. So I think I just deal with it in a different way. I very rarely cry. I know I've been in some situations, but I think I can sort of step away from it a little bit, but then have the empathy to look after the families. And if I do have it's a bit overwhelming and there's a lot going on, then I can just talk to, you know what it's like here. I could speak to John if I want. I can speak to one of the nurses. We all get it. So it's not too difficult. But when I say I work at a hospice, some people don't want me to carry on talking about it. And I could bore people about Derian House till I'm blue in the face. I could talk about it for hours, about how lovely it is and how lucky I am to work here. But some people don't want to know, which is fine. But it's the same with grief and bereavement. People don't want to know because it's a bit like the unknown. But ultimately, we're all going to go through some sort of grief and bereavement, aren't we? And it shouldn't be such a taboo thing to talk about. And I think child bereavement, people just don't know what to do they?
It's a different level, isn't it?
Do you know, I didn't even know there was a thing of a children's hospice. Like Bradley ended up going to an adult's hospice because he was 18. But when, we first discussed hospices and then somebody said, oh, you can go to a child's hospice, my first thought was, oh shit, there's a hospice for kids. And then I went, well, of course there is, because, suddenly they die too. But I don't know why. I think it's just one of those protective things, isn't it? That our brain just, you don't think about until you need to, because it's real.
And we've had parents that come here and they go, oh, it's amazing. We never knew about this. And I'll say, well, true, but equally, why would you? But I don't think they're highlighted particularly enough. I mean, lots of people know about adult hospices, but, there are a lot of children's hospices, and obviously we all work differently. But I think if people just came, I mean, sometimes we have open days here, and that's been really good for like local people. They'll come and have a look round and go, oh my God, it's completely not how we thought. And then their perception changes.
They are so beautiful, aren't they?
Because once you're in, you'll see that it's not a hospital. I mean, I good job you probably can't hear, but there's lots of hilarity outside because we've got children.
I can hear some of it, yeah.
We're in the swimming pool. We've got the music lady in. We've got music therapy. We've got the pet therapy dog in today.
Bradley loved the pet therapy dogs. They used to lay on his bed and he'd stroke them.
Well, everyone loves his therapy dogs. And we've got the sensory room. We've got the cinema. We've got a lovely park. Obviously, the pool's popular. Music room. Lovely sensory garden.
Bradley's room as well was really open out onto a garden, and there was beautiful flowers, and it was just really peaceful. And we were really lucky, and I don't know if this is the same for all hospices, but this is what it was for us. All the rooms were adjoining, so then they gave Simon and I a room next door, and then the doors were open, so we ended up having 2 adjoining rooms so that we could all stay as a family, so that all 6 of us had enough space to be there. But to be honest, Bradley had about 20 visitors a day. There was probably no less than 20 people in Bradley's room at a time. It was full always. And Just Eats probably came about 8 times a day, because all his friends would turn up really hungover and sit there chatting with him, and then they'd order a Just Eats that would turn up and they'd eat it, while they were chatting to him. And Bradley probably ate about 8 meals a day, because every time someone ordered Just Eats, he went, I'll have some too.
And that's nice as well at the hospice, because there's not really the restrictions as such of visiting hours, or you can only come here between 2 and 4, or so I think that takes a lot of pressure off families as well, if the child is here.
There was one time Bradley said, I really want this drink, and he couldn't remember what it was called, and he described it. Well, within an hour, somebody in the hospice had gone out and found whatever this drink was and brought it back for him. Like, there was nothing that was too much trouble for him, and I think people don't realise that about hospices.
And that's the beautiful thing about it, because I can do things that maybe in another environment I couldn't. So like you're saying, if you hear, oh, Bradley likes this drink, I could go and get it from Tesco, and no one's going to say, where are you going? What are you doing? You can go above and beyond, which is what I try to do. And that's why I love the job, because you can do these little things that maybe in other places you couldn't.
And like, there was the bloke next door that was in the room next door to Bradley. He came in, he'd been transferred from the hospital, he'd got lung cancer, and he sat outside smoking. And they were like, well, we're not going to stop him. That's not what we're here for. He's here on end of life, and if he wants to sit there smoking, we will make his end of life as happy as he wants it to be. And if that is him still sitting there having 20 cigarettes a day, then that's what he'll do. And it was very much about making everybody happy and comfortable. And yeah, it was just really lovely. And I just think that more needs to be done towards making other people understand that, to it'd be less scary.
It's just a shame that you have to raise so much money, children's hospices and hospices generally. We need, I think it's £6 million a year to function, and I think we only get very, very small percentage from the government.
£6 million a year.
So our fundraising department's like on fire. I know some children's hospices have been closing, and because they struggle to.
So sad.
Because I think if people knew what we did more, they probably would think, well, actually, it's a valuable resource.
Oh, I really love this chat. Sorry, I feel like I took over a little bit, like normal, because I just get a little bit excited.
I get excited too. I've been to talk sometimes to talk about Derian, and honestly, I could talk about it for 5-6 hours. I think I bore people in the end. It's like, yes, we know you work at Derian House. Yes, we know this company. So I understand your excitement, because it's nice to talk to someone that, that's interested in the work that we do.
Is there anything that you wanted to share that we haven't asked you, that we haven't covered, that you think is really important to share with other people?
Your grief is everybody's different, and I think that's important, because, and if you're feeling one way and someone else who's bereaved isn't, then that doesn't mean that your grief's wrong. It's just take it each day. And I mean, it is a roller coaster, isn't it, at the end of the day? And if you need help, try and find it and talk about it. But don't feel bad if you're having bad days and other people are having good days, because there's no right or wrong. And I would just say, however you feel is okay,
I'd put something on like a bereaved parent saying that I'd been swimming, and then a few days later, I don't think the lady was getting at me at all, but she just said, people are doing things, like people are even going swimming, and I can't even go out of the room. But when I go swimming, more often than not, I cry when I swim. And especially if I'm on my own, and I'll go round around the pool and I will just cry at the same time. I've quite mastered it now, not drowning and crying and swimming. And some days I'll talk to her when I'm swimming. I mean, if anybody walked past, I would think I've totally lost it. But I'm swimming with a smile on my face and having a chat. And then the next day crying. So, yeah, I do go swimming, but it's a coping mechanism.
A question I get asked a lot is, how are you and Simon? Because I've heard this ruins relationships. Are you still doing okay? And and you think, oh God, okay.
He knows he's sod.
You think, oh, I don't know. I hadn't really sat and I analyse a lot of things, but my marriage wasn't one of them. But and then you start thinking, oh God, are we going to be okay? And I'm sure people don't mean it like that, but sometimes it's a bit like, oh, okay, so now I've got to be really careful that my marriage is going to fall apart too. And then you feel like that's all everybody's doing, is just sitting and watching to see whether, your marriage is going to collapse.
And that whole pain,
that feels a bit awkward sometimes as well. Weird, isn't it?
Because there is an expectation that it'll be difficult, because obviously the loss of a child can cause a lot of issues, and the way people deal with things differently. So the woman might be dealing with different than the man, and then he can't cope with her crying, so she backs off a bit. So there is going to be tension, I'm sure. I mean, it's true, some couples do split up, but a lot don't. And so that might be another myth that needs busting.
Yeah. Interesting. Say, if you're really concerned about things, maybe stop coming up with stupid questions and observations. Yeah, stop analysing it. Yeah, stop analysing. You just come and do me bloody ironing.
Build me some cake.
I like lemon drizzle cake, thank you very much. And, me and my husband are fine.
No, it's a difficult path, isn't it? It's a difficult road to travel. But if anyone listening and they wanted to know if there was any support, I don't mind if people contacted me and I could help them find something in their local area. That's not a problem.
Amazing, thank you.
Because I have got quite a few places. It depends where they live, obviously, but I'm always happy to try and source things if people haven't got the time to do that. So just let you know.
Oh, thank you for that. And Karen and I, we need to get better at telling people to like and subscribe and go follow and all the rest of it, because we don't promote ourselves enough, apparently. That's what we get told that at the end.
Right, are you going to do the sign off, Bec?
Yeah, so grab yourself a cuppa, find a comfortable spot, and we'll journey through grief together. Thank you so much for being our guest today, Lucy. Really enjoyed it.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
And we haven't ever put you off doing another podcast interview again.
I do one every week.
Yeah, you have now officially lost your podcast virginity. There you go.
It's done. Exciting. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Lucy.
Thank you.
Hey, bye-bye.